Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Outcast. I am your host, Wolf, this time, and I am joined by.
Your regular host HC, who is letting Wolf do this because that's his thing.
hmm And as normal, when I do this, we're covering RWBY Volume 9. It finally came out.
Yay? Question mark?
Yay, question mark. What you mean? Supposedly, everyone loved this volume.
Actually, before we talk about opinions, let's actually ask this because this
hmm
season, this volume, if you will, Crunchyroll exclusive for around a year. I've seen like this is not going up
Yes.
on the Rooster Teeth site until 2024.
Yes, this will be 1 year of exclusivity on Crunchyroll, and then in 2024, some point, it will release paid for, that you have to pay to see it, and then I believe a year after that, it will finally release free. So if you're waiting to watch RWBY Volume 9 free, you've got a long wait in store. At least like a
If
year,
I,
maybe 6 months, somewhere in there. I forget exactly how they're going to do it. But at the very
I'll
least, you
tell you
have to
what.
wait till 2024 before you can watch it on Rooster Teeth's site.
Yeah, like for the record, you told me beforehand that as of now this season is only on Crunchyroll,
Yes.
and then I wikied it to see if Volume 10, whenever that's out, is gonna be the same, and all it said that it's going to be like a year exclusivity, and I'm like, that's a lot. And now you also tell me that once it is out on Rooster Teeth, people will still have to pay for it.
They'll have to pay Rooster Teeth's subscription thing, I think. I don't know if they're going to do it for free at that same time. I think there's at least a couple months before they'll give it, before you can watch it for free on Rooster Teeth's site, but I don't remember exactly how they're going to do it. I think they have stated something along the lines that it'll be at least a few months, though. But don't quote me.
Honestly, if I'm honest, not sure if I did. Like, you want to make it a Crunchyroll exclusive first, then by all means. But a year though, that seems
I
to be
mean,
pushing it.
I get you, and there's a lot of people that have issue with this. Unsurprising because they're paying for like a Rooster Teeth first subscription or stuff like
There
that.
you go.
And some people speculate this might have to do with Warner Brothers and the fact that they're just, cancel, 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 bang, 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 you're all dead. And a lot of people speculate Rooster Teeth may or may not be up on the chopping block. Who knows? And
Yeah,
RWBY may or may
because
not be on the chopping block.
Warner Brothers owns them, if I recall.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are under the Warner Brothers family of companies. I guess
Oh
under
boy.
Discovery now as well. So it's all up in the air. We have no clue. But some people speculate that it has to do with that. Yes. Some people speculate that, Volume 9 may have never gotten made if Crunchyroll didn't do this, right? And pay for it, I assume.
Mhm.
It's all, we
Oh,
have no clue. So it's very
yeah.
much, we're just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen.
So I guess on that note, I guess because it's kind of like a maybe lack of communication, because I'm sure if there was like some reason to why like Rooster Teeth loyalists have to wait a whole year. Although maybe they just find it safe to assume that the people who subscribe to Rooster Teeth are also Crunchyroll members. Maybe.
I guess because Ruby's trying to hit that same demographic of anime fan, and trying.
Well, some would argue it is an anime.
It is an anime. I'm one of those people. It is an anime. Let's just
Yeah.
be honest. But it is
Why
trying
did
to
I?
be
Why do you think
within.
I said it? I'm calling you out.
I mean, Avatar's also an anime. Fight me. But I mean, it,
Okay.
it is trying to hit that same demographic. So I get why they did it, especially if Crunchyroll wanted to, you know, like generate more traffic to their site, I guess you would say. Like, I get why they're willing to pay for it. This would be a big pickup for them. And Ruby's been on Crunchyroll before. I think you could watch
Yeah.
some of the earlier
Like
volumes for free.
all the volumes are there. Like
Well, all
for
the
the
volumes are there
record,
now. I don't know if all of them were there before. I know some of them have aired on Crunchyroll before, but I don't know if all of them have. Someone would have to correct me.
well, I can speak from someone that, I made a Crunchyroll account to watch this for the podcast,
Mm.
and I had to actually scroll down throughout all the volumes before I got to volume 9.
Because
So
Crunchyroll's got a
yeah.
great website that's really well designed when it comes to like showing their fucking season stuff.
All I'm gonna say is, you know what? If I can watch Spy Family season 2 as it comes out, then you know what? I'm game. But
I
that's
mean,
a
yeah.
story for.
I mean, like in a general sense, I would say paying for Crunchyroll fairly worth it for what all you get, show wise, and the fact that you
Yeah,
can
like
watch it as it comes
you
out,
definitely
and
get a
it's
bang for your buck, but it's I think it's more that uh, again, maybe people who are already subscribed to Rooster Teeth already have Crunchyroll, but if you don't, then it still seems, because the other thing is on Rooster Teeth, I I know from you that when that members would get to watch the latest episode of RWBY a week before it goes for free.
yes.
And I guess so. It's like, if you want to pay, here's an extra bonus, but you don't have to. It'll be free eventually.
I
You
mean,
just have to wait. And
really,
the
the
week
people
is,
this.
but like,
Oh, go ahead.
then a whole year
Yeah.
before you even get the chance to pay for it, and then who knows until you don't have to pay for it. And I am willing to bet you that when it's but when Volume 9 goes on the Rooster Teeth site, it's gonna be weekly again. So like you're
Here's,
basically,
I
it's
here's the
it's
thing.
pointless.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing, right? A lot of people, myself included, only
Hmm.
ever paid for first when a new volume was airing, right? Like there was, I would just about guarantee you, maybe I'm wrong. This is a huge assumption, and but
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet. I'd be willing to bet money that more than half, maybe close to almost all RWBY viewers only paid for a first subscription when RWBY was airing. There might be a selection of people who paid for a first subscription more often, or they just kept their first subscription going for Rooster Teeth
Yeah.
first. But I'd be willing to bet a majority of them only paid for it, like me, when the volume was airing, and then the second the volume quit airing, they stopped paying for it, and they just, hey, I'm done with this now. I'll pick it up again when you start airing again. So for them and for free viewers, this is, the most, like, those are the people this hurts the most. But at the same time, if you were doing that, you can probably just pay for 1 month of Crunchyroll, or you can, sign up for 2 weeks free with an email account and then watch that way real quick, binge it all, and then you're done, right? So it's not like the worst deal in the world. It's not the worst setup in the world. I assume from Rooster Teeth's perspective, like this was the money Crunchyroll offered to have it solely exclusive on their website. Probably worth it, considering they probably saw, hey, RWBY draws in this amount of first subscriptions. The money they're paying us is way more than that. So people can just stop their first subscriptions and go to Crunchyroll. That's fine. I
I
assume.
guess.
Like
Well, in a
it's
way,
definitely, it's definitely a lot of free viewers were upset, understandably so, because they were used to getting this 1 week after, and now they have to wait at least a year, maybe more. So for
yeah.
many of those people, if they decided to go pirate it, I get it. There was a whole thing of
Which
Rooster
even
Teeth.
then, for the record, because I'll say this, my financial state. Thankfully, I'm not poor or anything, but I can't really afford another streaming service at this point. So
There's
I
so many.
was looking for a way, and it's like, then again, this is really hard to find online. So
I was curious, so I did look it up because I pay for a Crunchyroll subscription. I don't know
and
why I need to preface
for the
that, but I'm
record, I
going
made some
to, so
cuts.
people don't think I pirated it. But I was genuinely curious, so I did look up. No one has uploaded this anywhere, as far as I could tell. Like, there's a couple of episodes, but like what I
Yeah,
saw
but
from
not
some
the
of the
whole thing.
big pirate sites, yeah, they don't have it all. Like, it's like no one cared, I guess, or something. I don't really
And
know.
for the record,
It's
I made
really
some cuts.
strange.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that everyone who listen gets it. I made some cuts. I made and I'm still on my 14 free days trial, but
Mhm.
I made an account. I saw this as it was intended, so I just want to make it clear.
I
But
mean,
before
like one of the big
before this
wigs.
was
Oh, go ahead.
I,
Sorry.
no, but I was just I want to say that for everyone who wants to say, well, then just pirate it if the companies are fucking you over. It's not really a solution here.
Yeah, for where you live, I believe, because like it'd be hard to find, but also because again, you just can't find it anywhere.
Yeah.
Like it's really strange. I was really surprised that no one's uploaded this anywhere, which that kind of shocked me a little bit. I'm very curious as to why that would be, but I have no clue. But I mean,
But
I guess that's a
regardless,
good
this
thing.
is. But we just figured we'll talk about it for
But it
because
is,
it
well,
was.
it is also worth bringing up. Like Rooster Teeth themselves, like they had to make a big announcement, like because a lot of people said we're going to pirate this. And to be clear, a lot of people didn't say that because of the Crunchyroll exclusivity. They said that because we didn't talk about it in our Ice Kingdom, review and all that. But it is worth mentioning. Round about I'm going to say a couple months before Volume 9 started to air, and when they started to show more Volume 9, it came out that Rooster Teeth has been going through some shit, and they've not been doing too great,
Yeah.
and like being kind of horrible as a company and horrible to its employees. Supposedly, they've
I
done a lot to try and fix that and better that, and some of that stuff was in the distant past, not recent past, but some of it
If
was
I
supposedly still
recall,
recent.
I'm not entirely sure, but if I recall, is some of those problems did lead to Blake's voice actress almost quitting the show. At least I screened them.
For Ice Queendom, that was because I believe the like director of Ice Queendom had like I don't know the full story for that one, I will admit, so I can't say for certain, but I know there's at the very least some allegations against him where he's, pretty much like horrible abuser, but I
Uh
don't
huh.
know if it's like, oh no, he actually is. I don't remember right off the top of my head, I will admit. I'm a
Uh-huh.
horrible fan. I don't keep up with all of the drama.
Well, to be honest, it's sometimes they also keep the details vague when they release
Yeah.
it to the public.
Yes.
So
But so I don't remember everything, but yes, she was talking about like there was a lot of stuff going back and forth there that I don't fully remember everything of, and I didn't get the full picture of, I will admit. But yeah, there was some stuff there. But what I'm talking about is people and employees directly dealing with Rooster Teeth themselves, not anything to do with Ice Queendom, but like with just Rooster Teeth in general. Supposedly, the people who work for RWBY were, for the most part, a lot better. There were some issues here or there, but yeah, like there was a lot of shit that came to the public, and a lot of that information like very much turned a lot of fans against Rooster Teeth. Understandably so. Let's be honest with that, right? Because
yeah, definitely.
a lot of terrible shit was opened up to the air in the public. So
Yeah.
for those who did choose to pirate it for that reason, I completely understand, and I get why you did it. Regardless of how Rooster Teeth may or may not feel about it, I get it, right?
Mhm.
Supposedly, again, from what we've learned, they are doing better than what they were, and they're moving forward. So, that's good. I hope that continues, and I hope they continue to do better. At the very least, it seems like, for the most part, for this volume, they, have done that.
I am not sure about the full story, but I hope that the
I'm not
terrible
like going
people.
through all of it. That would be like almost an entire episode in and of itself.
But for the
And
sake
we're not really
of
focused on drama here.
yeah, but for the sake of
Not that
this particular coverage, uh, I hope that the terrible people got their comeuppance and a huge
agreed.
kick in the balls. And to those who are trying to better themselves, good luck with that.
Agreed.
So anyway, now let's actually talk about Volume 9. you know,
No, let's
so
let's not.
So, for the record, in case you are new to the podcast, then first of all, welcome. Great to have you here.
Mhm.
Two, Wolf is the big RWBY guy. I am a casual fan who only saw the main volumes and I think a bit of World of Remnant because he wanted to do this on the podcast.
And Ice
So
Queendom, I guess we can say that now too.
Ice Kingdom, yes, definitely. But for the record, so Wolf is the big RWBY fan. I am just like I'm catching around, but I'm not a part of the fan base. He is.
Mm-hmm.
That said, since you're the bigger fan, what did you think about Volume 9? Or actually, do you want to kind of recap thoughts about the previous seasons just for the sake of it?
Oh gosh. I mean, I guess we can like go like a little bit with Volume 8. If I'm not mistaken, like Volume 8 and Volume 7, you were less than pleased with both of those volumes, especially Volume 8. I
Yep.
believe your opinion was, especially on the line of there's way too many characters, there's not
Yeah,
enough
the
time
show
to
just
focus.
became
It was too
Yeah, the
much.
show became too bloated. There was barely any focus. There were so many characters. Most of them I didn't care for, and it felt like the characters just didn't like that. After season 6, the series kind of stopped. Like season 7 and 8, there was maybe some sort of progression, but overall, it just felt like everything is stuck in the middle and like with no end in sight. And that is so not to necessarily say it's okay. No, you know what, I think season 8 I would actually say was bad, but season 7 was more of an and I honestly it was starting to become frustrating.
I personally like them both, but I do understand where a lot of people's issues come with from Volume 7 and Volume 8, and I had some issues myself. And in a general sense, right, I guess like my continued issue with RWBY, even for those volumes, still stands where RWBY just has a weird pacing issue at times where either it moves, where even when you think it's moving slow, it still feels like it's moving too fast. If that makes
It's like
any sense whatsoever.
honestly, I'll tell you what, that's actually kind of a skill. That's a skill you
I,
need. Like
it's it's something that like I don't think I've ever seen it with any other show, right? Most any
mhm.
show, if they feel slow, they feel slow. If they feel too fast, they feel too fast. But RWBY has like this weird thing where it manages to in the volumes where you can really notice it, like wow, this feels really slow, but it's also moving way too fast for what it should be moving at in regards to its current pace. And it feels like, and what I mean by this is, to be clear, right, there are things in RWBY where like, man, I wish you would have done this, and if you would have taken like just one more episode or like half an episode, added on like another 5-10 minutes to this episode, like 5 minutes
Or
at least,
cut some
it
of
would
the
have,
other
or
stuff that
cut
doesn't really
something that
matter.
didn't matter, right? There's a lot of
Mhm.
that within RWBY where the focus can seem off sometimes, where like maybe you shouldn't have focused on this, you maybe should have focused on this more important thing instead that would have added more to the characters or the story, blah blah blah. So that's generally what I mean when I say RWBY, even when it's moving slow, it's still moving too fast.
Yeah. Well, on so with that said, what did you think about Volume 9?
Volume 9, I would say overall, very good. Like a very big departure from Volume 7 and Volume 8. We have a much smaller cast. We're able to be way more focused. It's very interesting. I liked what is essentially the Feywild. I liked a lot of the stuff they did there. There's some really fun ideas that they explore and experiment with in here. And we just got to get a lot. We got to get a and we blah, 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 and we got to get a lot. That still feels wrong. But anyways, we got to enjoy a lot of really good character moments, especially I would say from
Let's
RWBY,
save that
Blake, and
for.
Yank. But I'm not going to go into anything. I'm just saying like in a general sense.
I am happy to say that it feels like they were like, you know what? People online might be right, and we did overbloat this freaking show, so let's tone it down a bit. And yeah, actually, if you remember when we did Ruby Ice Kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
when I said if they were to make Ice Kingdom kind of like a soft reboot kind of season, so that everything from some of the stuff that some of the characters that started below in the series were just gonna get erased by this like mini reboot, and it can like just have the main cast back in the spotlight it feels kind of like they did it with this season. Like this was like an Ice Kingdom Part 2 ish, like Ice Kingdom 2.0 in a sense. That's like you get the main cast, you get to develop them. There's actually, something when Volume 7 and 8 ended, I'm like, I don't really feel like something really happened here besides leaving us on some sort of a cliffhanger for the next season. Here, I'm like, I feel like when Volume 10 comes out, whenever it's gonna be, these characters change. These characters went through a process. When I'm gonna see Ruby, Yang, Blake, and Weiss in the at the start of season 10, they are most likely they are going to have some parts about them which are different than previously. So kudos to you, Volume 9, for actually doing some storytelling and progression. 9 volumes in. Good job. Now,
Rude.
is it a perfect season? No. There are some parts that we'll get to, and which honestly were kind of frustrating or confusing, but overall, I don't want to be too much of a negative Nancy because I did enjoy this season. I think it was a great. It's not the best one, but I think like since volume 4, maybe like maybe 6. I don't remember, but I think this is one of the stronger volumes, definitely.
I would agree. It's definitely one of the stronger volumes out of all of them so far. Like, yeah.
And for the record, yes, it has problems. We'll get to the problems, but I'm saving this for the spoilers. If I'm gonna just say, like you said about the pacing, it feels like some concepts are interesting on paper, but the execution isn't quite there.
I will say, for this volume, from what I understand and have been told, I cannot confirm this. I don't know if this has been confirmed, but from what I understand and have heard, the movie cut into some development time on the show, and the show had to drop like an episode or 2, I believe. This was supposed to be like maybe one more episode longer, and because they were doing work on, I think it was the movie or something else, they were doing work on some stuff, they had to drop an episode for this show, which is a little bit disappointing because I personally think it could have used that one extra episode for some very particular moments that we'll get to in spoilers.
Okay. So, anything else you want to say, or are we jumping into spoilers?
No, let's jump right into spoilers. I have a question for you when we get done with spoilers, but we'll wait for that one if I don't forget.
Okay, let's hope. So,
yeah.
Spoilers for Volume 9 of RWBY in 3, 2, 1. Still here? Good. So everyone's not dead.
Surprisingly, no. But, we might lose one or two along the way and then gain them back, perhaps.
But yeah, one by one.
One by one. Chapter 1, then, A Place of Particular Concern.
Okay, so I want to say right off the bat, if I'm gonna credit the show, considering this, for all intents and purposes, this started out as an indie show, right? And suddenly, and it got a budget as we went on, right? So I already want to say that, something that RWBY, at least even when it didn't have the big budget that it is now, it's still one, and there's still like some interesting shots and great battle choreography. And I want to, the way the first episode opens, like with the POV shot of RWBY, fighting. I forgot the character's name. Damn.
Neo.
Neo, we'll be fighting Neo, and Neo, keeping changing the shapes and stuff. That's actually a really cool shot, like good, and also a cool way to remind you where we were at the end of the last volume. I think
Mhm.
this was a really cool shot, and honestly, credit to them for this, and to I guess also mm, strong points for the entire volume. Just the environment designs, some of the sets, some of the overall effects and stuff. Like, I think this is the most beautiful volume we've had yet. This is like props to all to the animation teams.
I agree. Like it's a lot of fun. They definitely they got to have a lot of fun with like designing new and interesting areas because this is, again, like essentially that quote unquote Fey Wild, right? The ever after is where we're at. So it's very unique, it's very different from regular Ruby, and it's interesting and very fun to see them do all of that, right?
Hmm. And speaking of different from regular Ruby, you're talking about the character Ruby, not the team.
Mhm.
I really liked what they did with Ruby in this season. Like, because for the record, I guess we can kind of say, because one, spoiler section, and two, the theme of the entire volume seems to be the idea of self doubt and like handling defeat, and what does that make you like? This season was a lot about personal growth, which
Mhm.
I'm all for.
Especially for Ruby.
Yeah, especially for Ruby, as the leader of Team Ruby, and all of that stuff. So honestly, really good song. But what I find interesting with Ruby, at least in this episode, that it starts out really quiet, and the one thing we kind of know about Ruby is that she's the energetic one, she's the quirky one, she's the one that she's all when she speaks, she has this high pitched, energized voice, which you identify with her and stuff. But then for this episode and also the rest of the season, there are a lot of moments where she's actually kept mellow, and
Mhm.
she can get angry, and you see other sides of her. And like, I was impressed that, one, she was written well for the most part, and also the voice actress just managed to keep that adorableness to in the voice, but it's also a little quieter. You can tell that she's in distress. She's not entirely sure to what to make of situations. I like that. This was real. If I have to point out one thing that was, I would say, the most interesting and my personal favorite, despite the flaws in this volume, it's Ruby herself.
No, I mean, like Lindsay Jones is the voice actress for Ruby. She's always been, I think, someone who's wanted to like. You can tell, right? Volume one, way back when, definitely was an experience with voice acting. Very new to it, still getting into it, and then you can see that continued growth all the way throughout, and her learning and getting better and better and better, and then until you get to this volume, and it's like, wow, didn't know. This is great,
Mhm.
Lindsay, doing a great job.
Yeah. And I think, she's voiced this character for how many years
Oh
now?
God, it's 2023, 2013, so 10 years
Uh,
now.
Yeah, so she's been with this character for 10 years, and like now she gets to explore other sides of her. And actors will tell you that sometimes their favorite scenes or moments for characters are the ones where the characters are acting differently than usual, because they
Mhm.
can explore this as actors. It's like it's a challenge for them, and you can tell she's just, even though obviously again, she goes mellower, she's underplaying the characteristics that we come to know. But you can tell that this the actress is like having fun with the challenge, and she's bringing it, she's conquering it one by one.
Mhm. Agreed.
So
So, getting
all
into a
so
little bit of
one
the
thing.
episode, what did you think about our first new character? As we talk about, they got rid of all the bloat. We've added a new character. What did you think of Little, the mouse?
um I'm not sure if it's a he or a she, I'm sorry.
I
So,
believe it is they, is what it's supposed to
oh,
go
right,
by,
right,
is
right,
what the
they call it
fandom.
day, right. Right. They say they, right. But overall, I thought they were fine. Like, obviously, you need like the quirky sidekick character to kind, But I didn't find them grating or burn like. Oh, I was like, okay, I'm going to hate this mouse. I'm going to hate it at some point. But you they weren't amazing, but they were also like, yeah, they're fine.
I
I
love,
didn't mind. And
I
also,
love how you were like, I'm gonna hate this mouse when it gets into the show. The fandom, one trailer was all they got. Like even just like I think it was a 5-second scene from a trailer, and the fandom was like, we love Little, just instantly in love with Little. All more Little. The show is now Little only, and it's like, damn, okay. But that's the
I'm
fandom, I suppose.
I suppose, but like I did like when Ruby tries to describe to Little like where her friends are, and one thing she mentions is that if they saw someone with cat ears, and Little he gets afraid
Mm-hmm.
because cat mouse. So, I thought that was funny.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, I mean, I thought Little was a nice little addition. Haha, I'm funny. But yeah, I enjoyed Little for the most part. Like it's not they're not someone who steals the show, right? They're not a character that comes in that really needs a lot. They're a character that can be background and just kind of there, and via their movements and the animation, you can you get a very they do this quite well, I think, of getting a sense of, okay, this is kind of the character Little is supposed to be and what they're doing with them, right? And we'll
Mm-hmm.
get a little bit more into that later. But you know, what did you think of? You talked a little bit about this volume being about self doubt and kind of getting past that and moving forward, right? What did you think of? Because many people noticed that Weiss doesn't really do a lot of that. She's apparently more or
Yeah,
less the straight man to this world's wackiness, essentially,
I
and the comedic
I
relief.
was actually noting that because there are the moments where like either because when we first see Weiss, she's with Blake. Like Weiss and Blake ended up in the
Yes.
same place apparently, or at least they reunited off screen, and uh, and also after they find Ruby and they're looking for Yang, it felt like Weiss was the one that was the most kind of out of it. Like she didn't really have much optimism. She didn't have much, she didn't really. She wasn't really ecstatic about the good stuff, which I honestly thought she was kind of sus. Like I was sure something happened to her. Like someone is
It's Neo.
someone might yeah, maybe, but I was like, somebody like mind controls her. So maybe she's just playing along for some other reason. I just felt like something, but then no, we just and I did like it. She's talking about this with Blake, and further along with the other characters. Because there was always this pressure on her from her family, which granted did die down the more the series progressed, but I guess with this entire war which they basically lost, she just became indifferent. She just became pardon the
I
pun,
feel
but
like they might not have
she really
been
became
exactly
cold.
sure of what to do with her within the ever after, right?
Yes.
Blake and Yang, they kind of had the story there. I know a lot of people love like the ship that is White Rose, but
Oh,
I
we
I
are gonna get there. We
I
are
don't
gonna
know
get
if
there.
I don't know if that was like would have been a good idea considering we're focused on Ruby being depresso espresso at this moment, right?
Honestly, like I get what, because obviously again we'll get to that, but when you have Blake and Yang as the most popular ship, I guess,
It's
so
between
only
them and
makes.
White Rose, I would say. At this
Yeah,
moment, they're probably most popular.
yeah, but when one,
Confirmed.
but jumping a bit ahead, when one of them is canon, so obviously people are already jumping on. Oh, of course, so Ruby and Weiss, like you know, when does that happen? But I guess it's more. But I guess it's more. I don't really. I'm not really sure if I could see them walking. Maybe they
Well,
could
it's
because
not so much like
different
the reason I
circumstances.
brought it up is that not so much whether they do it or not. It's that I think they just didn't really know what exactly to do with Weiss other than the comedic side relief, somewhat. That straight man to this world's wackiness.
To be honest, she did well. Like
No,
her
she does it
animated
fine.
reactions, like they were funny.
Yeah,
Any
no,
actions
I
were legit
laughed quite a
funny.
few times. It's exceptionally well done. And like it does work for Weiss as being that more serious kind of like, straight-laced character, right? And this world
Mhm.
not being that at all, right? Like the Ever After is very much the opposite of what something Weiss would enjoy or like to a T, right? But
Definitely.
it definitely she doesn't like, and I can kind of see it because she had volume 7 and volume 8 with her father and the rest of her family to grow and learn a bit there, so I can understand where like, oh, we don't really need to focus on Weiss as much this volume. I
Yeah.
get it, but like
But I
I don't
did
know, I would have
like.
liked to have seen a little bit more from her personally, but I'm fine
uh,
with that because again, like volume 10, we're going to a place where the rest of her family is at. She doesn't know what happened to her dad yet, so maybe we can do some stuff there, and it'll be interesting, right?
I do want to say, I one thing to give this episode credit. I'm glad that the entire team got reunited on the first episode. That there was no like bullshit dragging the sun. Everyone like, and it does take time for them to reunite, but at least it's like
It's in
it's
one
like
episode
snap.
though,
Yeah,
right? It's
and and then but then there's this other thing that like Weiss figures a bit of like a Yang and Blake flooding like their hands touching, and she's like, finally. I'm like, yeah, you and me both, sis. And but okay, but overall, I'm like, all right, good good opening. Like it basically again, like I said, with the Ice Kingdom, I guess that it's nice to just have an episode which is the main four, the
mm-hmm.
main four that the show is named after. So
Mm-hmm.
it was nice seeing
Well,
them finding each other and setting up stuff for the rest of the season, stuff that they are actually followed on and are not just teasers.
what did you think about when they're all reunited and kind of like, hey, this is kind of what happened, and this is what happened after you fell off, this is what happened after you fell off, like that little like, hey, we're kind of just getting information between each other. What did you
I
think
like it
about?
because again,
Well, no, like let me
again,
finish. I liked it
yes.
too, but what did you think about, Weiss tells everyone that Penny dies and just immediately fade to black with Ruby fainting? What did you think about that?
I honestly, this is one part that I was thinking they were gonna play it off or something. Like it was gonna like it was something that's gonna come back in some way, either as a form of like PTSD or just Ruby being Ruby, but or like the trauma of it. But honestly, I'm kind of surprised that it was just something that's there. Honestly, just to say, kind of set up a cliffhanger, and that's it.
Hmm. Yeah, I this is, and you'll see this come through more and more in the volume as we talk about it, I feel, but one of my problems with this volume, and I don't know if it's because they just didn't portray it well enough, or if there just wasn't enough time that they could devote to everything with it. But it feels like Ruby's going through stuff, and yeah, some people can say, "Oh, Ruby pushed them all away, so it's not anyone's fault." And I'm not saying no one's at fault here, but it just felt like there were some discussions that could have been had, maybe should have been had between these characters, like, and
Mhm.
they just weren't because, again, right? How do you play off this scene? Like everyone tells me Ruby pushed them all away, but how do you play off this scene though? A person just outright fainted, and we just are left with fade to black, and Blake says, "Guys, I don't think we're in Kansas, anymore," and end of episode, and then we just no one brings anything up again about Ruby fainting. We just move on from there. And you can kind of sit back and say like, "Oh, it's, because they're having to move so quick. They're just from one thing to one thing to one thing to one thing," right? But I don't know, to me it just feels off that this person faints, no one says anything or does anything.
Yeah,
No
and also
one.
because
It feels weird.
yeah, it's also weird when you take into account that at least episode two does it, where at least it's where I'm getting the thing. I got the vibes for it that there was some sort of a shift in characters. Now that initially Ruby was the happy-go-lucky, optimistic one, and Weiss was the serious. Let's get stuff done. We need to like to be serious about this. And now in this, like Weiss is the one that at least tries to think a bit more positively, and Ruby is the concerned one. Ruby
Well,
is the real.
I would
Uh,
say Weiss is still
the
trying to
thing is,
get things done. She's still the most serious one. I would say Blake's the more positive one. Uh,
yeah,
Blake
but
takes over that role more.
at least if I need to compare those two, the ones again, this is for episode 2. I just see this on my notes that
Hmm.
it seemed that Weiss was a bit more positive than Ruby this time around, which is interesting. I'm not claiming it as out of character or something. I'm just
No, that's
saying
fine.
it felt more like they had something here that had to be cut later.
Hmm.
Like it was supposed to play into the teams, but it didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. Like going back to that supposed episode that might have been cut that we could have had, maybe that's where that came from. There was, that episode would have just been stuff that was interspersed throughout that would have, given us that extra episode essentially, right? If you get me, where we would have
Mm-hmm.
gotten a little bit more on different scenes throughout the show that probably needed it, like her fainting. Like, I don't know. It just, to me, it feels like there should have been a little bit more there. Or going into later stuff, right? Like, I think we're kind of done with first episode. Moving on to episode 2, since you brought it up, right? The altercation at the
Yeah.
auspicious auction, right? This is like, oh, we find essentially Penny's sword, right? That fell into this world. And, hey, we're trying to bid on that sword. And the guy's like, hey, if you can fill this jar with hope, then you can have the sword, right? You can have the item that you think is the sword. And Ruby just kind of looks down dejectedly. He's like, oh, you don't have enough hope anymore. And like, that's not something that's quiet. And it's like, I don't know. It feels weird that the other 3 girls don't address anything at all in regards to her with that. And again, you can come
Mhm.
back and say, well, stuff was happening, right? Things were going on. I get it, but it still feels weird that there's a gap there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get what you mean, and but I guess it's also I just kind of found, at least with this one, I didn't find it kind of weird. But since this is the episode that introduces this thing, it felt really random that suddenly this entire season was basically kind of a retelling of Alice in Wonderland.
Yes, that is basically the idea. Like this is basically, Remnant's version of Alice in Wonderland. Their version is
Wait,
like the Ever After and the Girl Who Fell Through the World, which is essentially like their protagonist Alex. You
yeah.
know,
I'm not sure how to feel about it. Like, on the one hand, it's done well, right?
I
And also,
like it as like an alternative. Like it's very, I feel it's unique enough that it's different enough, right?
no, no, no. Don't get me wrong. It's unique enough. It's different enough, and for all intents and purposes, they do it well. Especially later on where we have the entire story that like apparently Alex, sorry, had a brother named Lewis, and there was some sort of like a dark twist to it, which wasn't done by American McGee. If you get it, you get it, and I like that idea, but it also kind of felt random that suddenly it's like we're doing our take on Alice in Wonderland within this show. Like, again, not to discredit it, they did it well. I just pointed out as something that I'm like, huh, as I'm watching.
Well, I saw a lot of people had the complaint of what is the point in the Ever After? Why are we here? Because we're not pushing anything forward. And I feel like that's the wrong way to look at this because we are pushing something forward. We're pushing the character arcs forward, right?
Yeah,
And like I
I'm
saw
with you
some
on.
people say that, hey, this is filler. And I'm like, I feel like that's a very poor understanding of what filler is, right? The idea of filler is that literally nothing happens. Literally nothing is pushed forward whatsoever. Character arcs, story arcs, nothing changes.
Mhm.
This, at the end of it, you can at the very least say Ruby has had her arc change. She's been pushed forward, and so have Blake and Yang, right?
Yeah, again,
Weiss
as I
and Jean
said,
as well, right? Weiss takes a bit of a standstill here, and I would definitely be one of those people who say I think we still need more with Ruby. I don't feel you should just push her arc forward with this and then okay, we're done with that. No going back to that
No,
again.
definitely not.
I feel
But at the
like
same
there's
time,
still some more there that needs to be done and we'll get there. But overall, like this is not filler. This is stuff is happening. Something is being moved forward here. The story may not be, but the character arcs are, and I think that's the important thing to note here.
hmm. So what I do want to say is some parts did feel a teeny tiny bit fillery, but at the same time, like I said at the start, even before we got to spoilers, I felt like when it was all said and done, Ruby, and Blake, Yang, and Jean too. We'll get to him in a bit. Why less so? But I felt like they are going to be different in Volume 10 than they were when this volume started. I felt like there was some sort of a change. I felt like they conquered something of something in their lives. I felt it was different, so I can just call this season a filler one. At the same time, I am kind of like debating like why go so hard with the Alice in Wonderland metaphors, but it works. It's just odd.
I guess it was just like, hey, we have an entire show based on and around the idea of fairy tales, right? So we can't not do Alice in Wonderland, right?
Yeah, I guess it's just more because let's say this: if let's say each season was like like a unique take on an existing fairy tale. Like I know that like Ruby's kind of like at least Ruby's trailer from season one was kind of like Little Red Riding Hood and all that stuff, but it's not something that they really played into.
No, it's very
So
much like, hey, this character is based off Little Red Riding Hood. You might see a little few hints in here and there. Like Blake is Beauty and the Beast, and Yang is Goldilocks, and blah 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 blah. Right?
yeah,
Or like mythological characters or characters from history. Like Jean is like Jeanne d'Arc, right? From history, and Ren is like the gender bent Mulan, stuff like that, right? It's very background. This is the first time it's ever come heavy into the foreground. But I think it's something that you might see them start playing more into, because before this volume came out, they released a book which is like basically they created a bunch of different fairy tales within the world of Remnant and released that as like, hey, here's like some supplemental material for you to learn a bit more about Remnant. Here are fairy tale stories that exist within Remnant. They even, I believe, did like a small little animated thing where they animated some of those fairy tales and told them in like in an animation style, like told the stories of the fairy tales in an animation style. I've not seen those yet. I need to go watch those, but I think they're trying to get more into the fairy tale aspect of the show and really put that a bit more front and center than the background that it has been, based off of this volume and some of the other things they've been doing as far as like
which is which
side
is
media
interesting
goes.
doing it. So yeah, interesting doing it so far in, but all right.
I mean,
Um,
I think it's always been like RWBY has always been like this learning experience for them of like, hey man, we've been doing this. It's always been background. We can do a lot more with this. Like, look at what we've done with this story wise. We should do more with this. I think it's always,
yeah.
wow, we can do that.
I
Whoa.
wonder if it's something that I wonder if it's something that Monty, God bless his soul, if it was something that he was
I think it's something
planning
that
on.
I, it's all right. Gonna be real with you. Monty didn't plan shit. I feel that man just you know, he rode by the seat of his pants and it worked for him, not gonna lie. But, he was like fast and loose with that shit 100% of the way. I like this, we're throwing it in. I don't like this, take it out. I like this, no wait, I changed my mind. We're gonna change it because I like this part of it. And just roll with it and run with it. And it's like that worked for him. It's not a bad thing, but, I feel like it's not a
So
great thing
basically,
either.
you don't believe this was ever his plan to
I don't
actually
think
do.
this was his plan. I think it's just, that works. And then the new writers have come in and like, the old writers who are already there, Miles and Carrie, right, have just played it up a little bit, but they've learned as they've gotten better at doing all of this for 10 years at this point, and I'm sure they'll learn more that, oh, we can do more with this stuff if we focus on it a bit more, right? And so it's becoming more of a thing now than it was before, I feel.
So I guess before we move on to episode 3, I just want to say that the people like in the at this raccoons auction, the people kind of reminded me of Legos.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah. And again, like it's fun. Like they're, it's this
No,
combination
of
of
course. I was just
toys
I
and
was just wondering. I was just wondering if it's just me.
no,
Okay.
it's not.
So
Like it's very like toy like for some of them, and some of the other creatures are more real. Like it's this very weird combination. But again, once you learn how this world was created, right, you start to understand more of,
yeah.
oh, I get it now. But I mean,
Hmm.
a small side thing for me, I loved the idea of Jinxie, right? Just taking all the, like a raccoon peddler who just takes items and, uses illusion magic to disguise them and sell them as like these really important, amazing things. And all they are is just, oh, this is someone's random stolen arm, or this is like, this, old glass looking sword that looks kind of like, in bad shape. And then you have all this other stuff, right? It's just, again,
Hmm.
it's a very fun idea going with that Fey Wild stuff. You can tell that Fey Wild influence, or that that D&D Fey Wild influence, and like them kind of playing with ideas from there and really treating this like the Fey Wild essentially, where it's very
Indeed.
different and backwards and awkward compared to what we would normally think. But yeah,
Right.
moving on, episode 3,
So
Rude, Red, and
uh,
Royal. We get to see the Red Prince.
I wonder what he's a tribute to. Hmm.
Nothing at all. What are you talking about? We don't do references here.
Yeah, of course. But I did like the Prince character. It was fun.
I
Like
mean, the fight in this episode, really enjoyable. I thought was really unique, really interesting to watch. I
yeah,
did a lot of
like
fun.
the way
Loved
they
the
did like
music for the fight scene here too.
yeah, like basically this entire thing was kind of like a chess game, and it was
Chess
really
game
cool.
gone wrong, gone wild.
Yeah, but like you said, the animation, the sets, the everything. It was like we've seen this kind of setup in a few times before. Obviously, like we said, there's like I think like in Harry Potter too, we did like this kind of chess game and stuff. But this was really cool. This was really unique. It was also animated really interestingly. I
Hmm.
enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
We got to see a little bit more of Ruby's doubt because she didn't want to get anyone hurt again, and being like the
Hmm.
leader, having to send people in and get them hurt.
Yeah.
I loved that. A small little
Which
tidbit.
was again an interesting metaphor with her having to send people to get her as the leader when she is literally playing chess with her friends as game pieces.
Hmm. Very nice, very clever. I liked it. And then we
Hmm.
finally get to see the Curious Cat. Definitely not a reference. Don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. It does reminds me of some other cat from a similar story.
No clue what you're
Uh,
talking about. That story
obvi-
doesn't exist.
Listen, this is obviously a reference for Toto from Wizard of Oz.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's the reference.
Hmm.
But yeah, the Curious Cat. What did you think?
Listen, we've seen like the Cheshire Cat being done before, right?
Yes, yes.
So it's not like this is a unique take that
No,
we haven't before,
but
but
I think it's one of those things of, do you think it was done well with what they're doing, right? This version of
yeah,
the
definitely.
Cheshire Cat.
Yeah, no, I did like the Cheshire Cat in this, like again, the Curious Cat as it's called, but obviously, I did like that it's a bit more, that is less. He still has like the trippy dialogue, He still has like he still says like the things that on the surface don't really make sense, but at the same time he also does this like really with this really kind of elegant voice
Mm.
to it that it's even if he's talking complete nonsense, you can tell that he knows what he's talking about. And near the end, because he's our villain essentially, when he has to go into villain mode, he's also pretty threatening. So I like that.
I was just curious. Who is he voiced by?
Good question. I don't have a list.
Robbie Damon. Oh, I know this
Oh,
person. That's. I
he.
thought that voice sounded familiar. Yeah, Robbie Damon is who voices the Curious Cat.
If I'm not mistaken, I think he was Spider-Man at some point.
Let's find out. I am curious.
I am. Are you a curious cat?
Ha 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 ha. Yes, he was the title character in Marvel's Spider-Man, the
Yeah.
Disney
Okay.
XD
So
2017 version.
yeah, it is interesting because the his Spider-Man voice is nothing like this. So that's range.
He's also been in
Anyway,
a lot of other shows too, if you're curious, you know.
no, like he's around, but I just remember I've heard that name as a Spider-Man voice actor at some
Mm.
point. So yeah,
But yeah,
and
Robbie Damon. So he does quite well as a Curious Cat. Do enjoy.
hmm and hey, why not? Why not?
He's a
So
good pick.
and then like in episode 4, as they're traveling around, then Ruby asks him if like he's actually know about their adventures and stuff, and then he goes, "So many characters to keep track of," and I'm like, "Are you agreeing with me? Are you agreeing with me? Or are you making fun of me, or are you aware?"
I thought you might get a kick out of that one. I
Mm.
I'm very much on meta humor like that, but I get it. A lot of people enjoy
Like
that, but you know,
I,
I just go,
I'll tell you what.
okay, I get you.
I'll tell you what. It depends.
Mm.
It depends. This one, I guess you could argue because because this is like this, uh, this is like this mythological being. Then okay, yeah, of course you would know that, but. Ruby is not really a show that does meta humor,
Mm.
so it
I
is a
mean,
bit.
yeah,
It
I
feels a
guess
bit
yeah,
off
you
in
can
that
say
one.
that because a lot of their meta humor came from like their spin-off series Ruby Chibi.
Hmm.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
guess like the main show doesn't get too meta humory. A little bit here or there, but for the most part, it stays away. You know, but yeah, like very good character, very interesting. I love the fact that they play because again, you mentioned it already, so spoilers, God. But the
Mm-hmm.
Cheshire Cat ends up being our main villain, or yeah, more or
Hmm.
less our main villain after Neo. And
Yes.
I love how that plays into because or the Curious Cat. I called him the Cheshire Cat. I guess it doesn't matter.
I
But
wonder what it was based on.
I don't know what you're talking about. That was just an honest mistake. There is no
Of
similarities here
course.
whatsoever.
Of course.
But yeah, for me, I've always loved the idea of the Cheshire Cat. Like it never feels like it's your ally, right? It always feels like, oh, you know, the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, right, might be your ally, might be your enemy, might be something in between, right? You never feel like it's completely on your side. And I think
Hmm.
they really do that well here where the Curious Cat feels very much in the same way. And then you find out, oh, he's definitely not been on your side. He's very much, out to get you. He is your enemy, right? Because of what he does. And I enjoy that thought of like, hey, he is that kind of I guess like I don't want to say necessarily eldritch, but for lack of a better word to get across the idea like that that outer thing, that very odd weird thing. They did very well with that, is what I'm saying.
Yes,
I enjoyed that.
definitely. Hmm. Agreed. And speaking of stuff that I really enjoyed and and they did well, they come across this what is it, a cricket?
Cricket.
That he makes them have a
Well,
inhale the smoke, and
oh,
they're like,
that's episode 4, I believe. Yeah. So
yeah.
in
Well, we
episode
did kind
4,
of jump into
that's
that, so
true.
yeah.
So again, episode 4, Cat Most Curious. Yeah, we learn more about the curious cat, and we meet I not a cricket. I feel caterpillar, basically referencing the
But,
caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland, right? And yeah,
could
he
be.
like he puts them in a trance, and we see like Weiss, Blake, and Yang are like, no, I am a huntress, and this is why I'm a huntress, and we're having our like stand up moment where we've learned and we've become better,
Which,
referencing
thank you.
way back to when Oobleck asked them, hey, why are you a huntress? And Weiss, Blake, and Yang didn't have good answers back then, right? And now they do. So very
Hmm.
nice. I love that moment. And then we see
Yeah, and
Ruby.
it's like thank you for having some sort of character development. I like this.
No, it's good. It's really enjoyable. And then we see Ruby. She doesn't have a good answer. She doesn't want to be a huntress anymore.
Yeah, and it's like that's the thing that like when I saw it, like, fuck, I actually feel for this guy. What?
Mm-hmm.
Where was this lately? Where, I ask you?
All the hugs for Ruby. She needs it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Definitely.
then the cat comes in to save them. And when we see the cat gives a little bit of his heart, apparently, to the caterpillar, and he gets sucked up by the tree. And that's where we finally learn about the idea of ascension in this world, where, hey, if you go back to the tree, you can basically become a better version of yourself, essentially.
Yes.
And this is where we start to have doubts about maybe going to the tree isn't the best idea. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We don't
Which
know
I
yet.
also found interesting because again, kind of like Alice in Wonderland, Cheshire Cat, and everything. There's this entire there's this entire idea of wait if we just had this kind of destination that we were going for, but suddenly what if the destination we wanted isn't the best idea, right? Like I like it.
Yeah, and like we learn more about also like everyone in this world has their roles, their purpose, and if you lose your purpose or if you feel like you've achieved your purpose, you go back to the tree to ascend and gain a new purpose potentially. It's very interesting stuff, and it's this is where we get a more unique take on the world of Alice in Wonderland, right? Something very
Mhm.
different,
Yeah.
which is interesting. And it feels very storybookish almost, right? Where, hey, the cat is almost like a narrator in this instance, where it's his job to remind the other characters within the story of their purpose and to get them back on the right path or to help them find a new purpose within the story, quote unquote, right? It's very interesting. I loved how they did this. It's very
Hmm.
unique, I feel. I've not seen anything like this before.
Definitely agreed. And I really liked episode 4 because it
Yes.
again it gave me something that I felt was missing from Ruby, and that's development for Team Ruby. Go
I think
figure.
honestly, like you get your Ruby angst, you get like Weiss, Blake, Yang affirming who they are and what they want to be and why they are that. You get a lot of great character development here and some interesting story tidbits. I think episode 4 might be one of my favorite from this volume for
Yeah.
everything that you get because it's a very strong episode.
I agree completely.
Well, moving right
So
along, episode
so
5,
I think
the parfait
episode,
predicament, because Weiss,
mm,
Blake, and Yang are tiny now. Are still tiny, I
yeah,
mean.
well, still tiny anyway. But honestly, this is one that I'm like, it, it's fine. It's an episode.
This one I feel is mostly meant to like give you a little bit more because as an audience, right, we've saw back in episode 3 that Neo's here too, and she's basically like her semblance is apparently evolved in this area, and it's even stronger because she can create things that are way more like more, I guess, for lack of a better word, like because
More.
she's using the Jabberwockers to you know, get at Ruby and the rest of the gang and, hurt this world, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, we this episode's mostly I think just introduced like, oh, Neo's creating the Jab Walkers. That's weird, for the characters because we as the audience kind of already had some inkling of things.
Yeah, definitely.
And this I think is also to introduce the blacksmith, right? The
Hmm.
character who
Which.
Oh, go ahead.
Honestly, a character that I didn't really like. It has a purpose, right?
I
It
think
has a
this is
purpose,
just
but
to
like,
give you like that little bit of introduction before you get to the final episode where they're the final two episodes really where they're way more involved, right? The blacksmith, to be clear.
yeah, but like the blacksmith is the one thing that kind of felt like, uh, uh,
It's interesting
uh,
because the blacksmith, you know, it feels very much separated and apart from everything in this world so far. But it definitely feels like because again, blacksmith, the idea is creation, right? And it makes sense. It's just it's definitely different from everything else in this world, I would say.
mhm,
But we do get to see a little hint of something that I was interested in. A very unique looking weapon, Summer's weapon. This is like
yeah,
one of our first little hints of, Summer, Ruby's mother.
yeah, right. There was a. Is it the one also that was the flash? Is it also the episode with the flashback in it?
No, that one's later.
Okay.
This one just like we get to see her weapon, and everyone, I remember everyone in the fandom like, that's Summers. That's got to be Summers. We're fucking freaking out, yo. That's Summers' weapon. Tell us that's Summers. That can't be anyone else's. That's Summers' weapon, right? Everyone was freaking out. It was great.
I
But
can imagine.
even more than that, I think people were freaking out even more than that because we get to see Jean, who's old
Okay.
now.
Okay. I was waiting for this. I was waiting for this because when he shows up, I'm like, wait the fuck, who is this?
Yeah, you get the rusted knight, and then he takes off his helmet, and it's like, it's Jean, and he's old. He has a beard now.
But like, I didn't get it was supposed to be Jean. That's the
You
thing.
didn't.
I didn't because it's not his voice. He has a beard.
It
Like
is
I'm
the
like,
same
wait the
voice actor, by the way.
yeah. I was about to ask, is it the same voice
It
actor?
is.
Because I'm like,
He's just doing
fuck.
a deeper voice, but it is the same voice actor.
Well,
Believe it or not.
shit.
I believe it's. Oh, I want to make sure, but I believe it is. Yes, Miles Luna. I wanted to make sure that I didn't say the wrong name. Yeah, Miles Luna
Yeah.
voices Jean, and that was his voice still.
And I just on the big same voice actor aside, he did change his voice. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
usual Jean voice,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, no, he definitely changed it up because you hear the usual Jean voice later this volume,
And
and
by
it is
the end,
definitely
yes.
different.
But here's the thing: so it's not the traditional Jean voice. So and he doesn't look like himself. So the episode ends. I'm like, who the fuck is that? And
I love how you were confused.
and then I was even more confused because suddenly episode 6 starts and it has the same with Rue. It suddenly has like a Jean's point of view on the climax of Volume 1, and I'm like, wait, what is this? Why are we focusing on Jean now? What does this have to do
Like,
with the
I
story?
love how you.
We had
Who is
all this
this weird
development and now
dude?
we're doing the
Who is
same
this
bullshit.
guy?
And like, yeah, but that's the thing. And then I'm like, wait, so we ended on the cliffhanger now. Like, what does Jean have to do with anything? What is the? Are we doing this bullshit again? We're gonna jump on between, and then afterwards, when we find out that he kind of did this thing with time, I'm like, wait, that was Jean? The fuck?
I love that.
So this was my personal dipshit moment.
I mean, I loved how they did that though. I loved how like we're kind of combining. I mean, we can like this is a little bit of episode 6 and 5 together, but I loved how episode 6 we get the time fruit where he just picks the time fruit and he's basically flung backwards in time for however long,
Yeah.
right?
No, actually, I appreciated it. And again, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this because I don't have much experience with the Through the Looking Glass.
Mm,
I didn't read that one, but I know that time is a factor in it,
mm.
or at least like an actual character, or maybe it's just the live action sequel. Ugh.
Yeah.
Mm. But anyway, so because time is an element in the Alice in Wonderland story, so it was really interesting to stick true to what you are adapting, quote unquote, and also make it make sense in the context of the show. I thought like it was quick to the point. It didn't feel like it was they stuck on it for too much time. It didn't feel like it was rushed. It was like That's all I need. That's good. Moving on.
Well, it's also really fun because you learn that, oh, this fairy tale that everyone read back in the day, right? That was like the girl who fell through the world with Alex and her brother Lewis and the rusted
Yeah.
knight. This character that
So
was in it was
is this
apparently
where?
Jean.
Yeah, that's also. So this is the one with the backstory where we also find out that that apparently Alex is the one who murdered her brother when they got to the tree. That like if she made it back, her brother didn't, and turns out she was kind of to blame for it.
Supposedly by this point, yes.
Hmm.
This is what Jean thinks, and this is what everyone assumes, yes. And
Yeah, but
like we we learn, here that like Jean was apparently this hero in this book that inspired so many different people, right? Which is very
yeah,
clever
mm,
because
it's very clever. It's very clever, and it's also it is kind of like I do like those kind of paradoxy things that he was this hero which inspired everyone, probably including himself.
even though he thinks
Although
he's not all that great of a hero,
yeah, that was really clever.
it's fun.
That yeah, actually I was kind of laughing because I'm like, wait, if he's the hero from the book, I was thinking they would kind of do like with the Darkwing Duck thing, if you know what I mean.
Do you mean like the older version of him and the younger version of him thing? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, like because in both like in both the older Darkwing Duck show and in the DuckTales reboot, there is kind of this thing that Darkwing Duck kind of inspired himself to become a
Oh
superhero.
yeah, yes.
Like either if it's his older self time traveling to convince his younger self to become a hero, or in the DuckTales reboot, which is an actor taking on the role and then deciding to do it for real once because he grew up with the original.
Mm.
So either way, I thought they were kind of going to do that, but then it's like no. Turns out that John never liked this character, and now when he finds out he actually was this character, he realizes why he has to live with with a bad decision he made as this character. So that's really clever.
Mm.
I like it.
Yeah, I agree. It's really good because you have that right, like you said, you have that John having to live with all his past mistakes and thinking he's not a good hero, and learning that hey, I'm that character that inspired so many different people, even if I don't realize that, right? It's just, again, very clever, very fun, like a very good idea that they did here.
Hmm.
But then also in
Um,
episode 6, we get another thing I
we got a
love, the
we
Punderstorm. Very clever. The whole, like, hey, you can't get out of the storm, and like, because this storm is supposed to be a crossroads storm, and it only happens when you come to a crossroads and you can't
yeah.
make a decision. And so the storm, you either have to wait for the storm to pass or you have to make a decision so that way you can get out of the storm and it'll end early. Very fun
Hmm.
idea. But even
Yeah,
more importantly,
I guess so. We're talking about this.
we are talking about this. Lake and Yang.
Okay.
Bumblebee is confirmed.
Yeah, Bumblebee's canon. So I will say, I like the ship. Okay, I like the ship. I support it. I was waiting for it. But this dialogue was so heavy-handed, man. Like like
I mean,
they were
I don't.
really
I
pushing
think
for it.
they've people have been waiting so long for this. I think if they tried to be
I know.
subtle, it wouldn't be as enjoyable. I think they had to just be let's be on the nose with this shit. I mean,
Yeah,
hell,
but
they
how
even
much like
have them
oh,
like, hey, there's this little island in the middle that we have to meet on, and we're both on two bridges. And if we think of something and don't say it, we get further away. But if we think of
no, no,
something
no.
and do
This
say it, we get
no,
closer.
this I'm okay. This I'm okay with.
Okay.
But the way they're like, when they find out, oh, we need it, but they're like, then the bridge disappears. Like, how do we take the next step? Or
Oh.
like, we need to get together on this island. It's like, for fuck's sake, just
I
do
love that. It's very hammy. It's very this show, I feel.
it.
And it's like, I
I
don't know. They can't be like subtle about this. They have to be very on the
but
nose with it.
you because there's already this thing of what they like about each other. Say it. The bridges are like you don't need to like. How do we take the next? Like let's say what the writers keep thinking about when developing the show doesn't need to end in the script.
I don't know. I enjoyed it. As
Okay,
heavy-handed as it is, I
for the
enjoyed it.
record, that's me nitpicking though. It was
No, that's
just
fair.
but the thing is, I did like it, and when they do end up getting together and they do kiss, it's great. I
What
do
did you
think it's
think
like,
about Jean's little statement of, feels like I've been waiting forever for that?
yeah,
Fucking
thank
meta
you, thank
humor.
you, John.
Fucking get out of
Yeah,
here.
actually, I have a note there. You and me both, John. You and me both. But on that note, so they finally kiss. It's like all like yay and everything. Honestly, I think it's 3 seasons too late. We could have done this 3 seasons ago, but I'm
No.
thinking it.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I was hoping for dear hope that they just wouldn't even do it this season. Still, just keep on stringing these motherfuckers along, Bumblebee. Just keep doing it. Just, I
I
was
hate
hoping.
you.
If I was a writer on this show, I would still be stringing your asses along because I'm an
Sometimes
evil son of a bitch.
you see, sometimes there are miracles in the world, Wolf, and one of them is that you are not writing this show.
Oh, one day I'll write a show and it'll be like, gay lesbians, and I'm gonna string you along for the entire show and give you something at the very end. The very
So
end.
you're going to be the CEO of Disney.
God, I wish. Listen, if
Okay.
I was the CEO
Anyway.
of Disney, Our House wouldn't have been canceled. Let's put it that way. So you should make me the CEO. Now, yes, Lose and Amity wouldn't have done anything for 10 seasons, and in the 11th season, you would have finally got something. But at least Our House would have gotten, 11 seasons or whatever, how many.
Well, like really, some maybe I should put this on
Pros and
Twitter
cons,
as
right? If I'm the CEO, you
no,
get more
no, no,
Outhouse.
no.
But if I'm the CEO, you don't get Lose and Amity very quickly, right?
I,
Pros and
I
cons.
was about, I was about to say I should put, the two like having Owl House as it was, or having Owl House like go on for 11 seasons when you as the writer wanting what you want to do,
With me as the
and
CEO, not the writer.
and one would be the blue pill, one would be the red pill. Let's see what people choose.
Maybe you take both. Maybe you get something really crazy. Who knows? It'll be fun.
Whoa.
Make me CEO. Give me that power.
Uh,
Do it, Disney. You won't.
uh,
I can't do any worse than you already have, Disney. So, just give me that power and we'll see.
The mascot of an evil corporation.
Just bad joke.
I don't care. Bad joke. Like you have a right to say.
I mean,
You
I
just
don't, but still.
I was making an impression of you if you would become the CEO of Disney, because as you know, Mickey Mouse takes over you.
Nah, me and him would have to fight for that. Mickey's dead. Anyway.
It just sounded funny for you to say Mickey's dead and then just do the laugh.
Fair enough. Anyways.
Okay.
Back to RWBY. Which may be owned by Disney in the future. We don't know.
I doubt it. If it's under Warner Brothers, no way.
Warner Brothers might be bought by Disney. Who knows? Disney want to buy everything.
Let me tell you, if Disney buys Warner Brothers, then the entertainment industry is gonna fall down and collapse. No way.
It'll do something.
Anyway, back to episode 7.
Episode 7, The Perils of Paper Houses. The Paper Pleasers.
Listen, I like this season overall, but if there's one episode that pissed me off, is this one.
I love this one because it showed you hey, Jean's been here by himself essentially for many years, and so he's just kind of lost it a little bit. I love how I've just named all these different papers after all of my friends. That one's RWBY. It's weird.
No, but before this, like, because
It's
this episode
fun.
started with like, get up quickly, quickly, we have a line to, and then it's like, oh, you just have a schedule of taking care of your paper friends, okay? And then that's an episode which starts so, so
Like the
uh,
the town's on
lighthearted.
fire. Oh God.
Yeah, but like, all it shouldn't end with Ruby having a meltdown. Which, for the record, I enjoyed Ruby's
You don't think
meltdown.
so?
Hmm. It felt
Why?
too much. It felt like too much of a jump from,
Ah, I
like,
get you.
uh,
I get
let,
you.
let's say this, because we have this episode which kind of sets up what Jean has been doing in this world, and that he has those paper friends that he protects, and those kind of thing. And then suddenly somehow we get to the point where Ruby just snaps at everyone, and it's like, I enjoy the idea of Ruby getting to it, and they were kind of building up that she's not herself since the end of the previous volume, which I like. But this didn't feel like the episode to do it in, and especially when she snaps at Yang and Blake for becoming a couple. Like, where did this
Well,
come from? Like,
she's I, so my thing for this, right, is we have like Jean snaps at her first because I mean, she snaps a little bit and she gets angry at things because she freezes up mid battle, right? She drops her weapon and she almost gets killed, and everyone has to save her. And the paper plazers essentially kill themselves to reincarnate. They finally get their wish by flooding the town, which is made of paper, and so they do what paper does in water, right? And they get to reincarnate via the tree. Something Jean has been trying to keep them from doing this entire time because he doesn't trust the tree and he thinks the cat, had something to do with Alex's and Lewis's, or with Lewis's death and all that, right?
also, patience pays off. I see you, writers.
But yeah, like, we have all of that happen, and Ruby snaps a little bit, Jean snaps back, and then Ruby really gets angry, and she gets very upset and runs off. And that's supposed to be like this, everything comes to a head and no one realized this. And
Yeah,
I don't know, I come back to, I think what this needed was something of, like I said before, I go back to the to Ruby finding about Penny's death and Ruby fainting. Everyone says Ruby pushed everyone away, but you didn't see Ruby pushing everyone away until this moment right here,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It
And I think that's
as
why
I
it
wrote
feels
there.
so off. Everything else, like, I can look at that and attribute it to, oh, all these different things were happening, no one got the chance to. But it feels like, but at the same time, you're the writers, you could have made a moment where people would have had the chance, and then Ruby could have pushed them away. Then she didn't have to be angry about pushing them away. She's just like, oh no, I'm fine, don't worry about me, right? Like that kind of Ruby, right? Where don't worry about me, I'm perfectly fine, there's nothing wrong. And there is something wrong. And they were like, and everyone trusted her. And then we get to this moment where everyone realizes, oh no, there was something wrong, badly so. We didn't realize it. And then, again, like we needed that moment before this moment, right? So that way we could have this moment. That way this moment wouldn't feel out of place. Because I agree with you.
Yeah,
This moment does, it's not so much, I think it's the episode it's fault. I think it's just the moment itself
yeah.
does feel somewhat out of nowhere, right? Because again,
I did
there's no
say,
lead up to it, I feel.
yeah, like I said in my notes here, it's like it feels like there's something that's trying to get out. Like there's something good on paper that's trying to get out to the world, but it's not there. It's just it doesn't reach there
And
because
again,
there's,
I stand by it. It just needed that one scene to happen before it where someone tried to
yeah.
talk to Ruby and she just, did the Ruby thing of, I'm fine, don't worry about me, right? Like, that sort of thing. And then we get to
I
this
think what
moment.
kind of stacks it is that this episode shouldn't have really started with the either with with the comical, oh, this is what John has been doing, this is the paper people. Like it should have been a regrouping episode that, like, after everything that happened, after yeah, after the crossroads, after the chess game, after the cheshire cat, after everything, this should have been like the one where they actually sit down and talk. And it
Maybe
wasn't that.
maybe it could have been that. Maybe they could have had a bit of a talk here, But if you have a talk here, you have to be careful how far you push it, because then you get into like what happens at the end of this episode with Ruby snapping, right, and lashing out at everyone. So you don't want to have too much of a talk, but you need to have that talk somewhere here where Ruby can like push people away to some degree and say, no, don't worry about me, I'm perfectly fine, right? You need something in there where that can happen. I don't feel like having Ruby snap in this episode is inherently bad, but I do see where you're coming from when you say maybe this episode could have been a bit more of the reunion episode, and then next episode we get like the paper pleasers and Ruby snapping potentially, right?
Mhm.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, not really. Like, I guess because I'll tell you what, episode 7 felt like there were two episodes that were kind of mashed together.
I guess.
One is one is like the
Well, do
one.
you think the paper pleasers episode would work, like that part of the episode? Do you think that would work better with like the reunion thing of them just kind of getting together and talking, perhaps?
Maybe I think yes, and then like have an entire episode about
And
about
then maybe like
Ruby's
another
feelings.
episode, the paper pleasers are, manage to, commit die, and
Yeah.
that goes into the, you know,
Mhm.
like breakdown and
Basically,
Ruby lashing
this
out.
needed a rewrite. This needed a rewrite. Something here needed a rewrite, or maybe restructuring of some kind.
That's fair.
But it felt rushed. Like it wasn't quite there, and it kind of carries on to episode 8, where I like Ruby's arc, but it feels like something is missing. And then when you continue throughout episode 8, there's this entire thing which I get, which it's basically the mindfuck episode of Ruby hurt us all, because
And we
the
think you should, and so, drink the tea off yourself and commit die
yeah,
and, you know, be gone out
and
of
like
everyone's life.
which I get that Ruby is vulnerable at that point and she's probably not thinking straight, but she gave the implication that she knows it was all an illusion. So that felt a bit weird.
I don't know. I guess you can look at it as her mindset of Neo finally pushing her over the edge, as well as, losing Little too, who's also crushed by Neo and is
Hmm.
destroyed essentially.
Yeah.
And that being right, that final, the straw that broke the camel's back, right? That final nail in the coffin of, okay, I can't do this, I'm terrible at this. I need to be better. I need to be someone different, right? There's a
Mm.
lot of discussion you could have about this, because it's like, she
Those
does.
are the
I, I, it bothered me so much to sit back and watch people within the fandom, because like there was a lot of conversations that happened and came up, and it's like Penny's death was suicidal ideation. This wasn't that.
uh,
Ruby didn't commit suicide, and it's like, why do we? It bothered me so much that you had a lot of people within the fandom who wanted to basically bend over backwards at times, it almost seemed, to just not say that this is what this is, which is Ruby committed suicide, right? Like, she literally looked at, said, I don't want to be me anymore, looked at her friends and family, her sister Yang,
mhm.
and then just, okay, you're all there, drinks tea right in front of you. And it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, that wasn't a holy shit moment. I would agree. Yeah.
And I mean, there's so much you could talk about here. This could practically be an episode in and of itself, almost, right? Because a
Mhm.
lot is happening within this scene. And even if you dislike everything with Neo and her semblances, and seeing Pyrrha and Roman again, and
This I didn't mind. This I didn't mind. What I mind is that I got the impression that Ruby knew it was all an illusion. That
I think
Neo
it's
was
fine that
playing.
she knows, right? Because
Yeah,
it's still,
but I felt like if she didn't know, then her reaction, because there's the point where like she hurts husband,
or Oscar,
and
you
it's
mean.
like yeah, Oscar, and then she's like, you did this to me, you did this, like you are, and it's like, I felt like I know that Ruby is like the pure one and everything, but She should have. She get the impression that she knows it's
I
not
don't
real.
think
That's
that
why she's
matters. I
fighting
think that's the wrong. I think you're focusing on the wrong thing here. I don't think it
them.
matters whether she
Maybe
knows it's an illusion or not. I think
uh,
again the
to
focus
me
is
it felt
she's
like
just
it is
in.
because that's what
I
pushed
don't.
her over the limit.
No, but
Like
again, right? It's not so much that whether she knows it's an illusion or not changes nothing, right? Like it doesn't like she's still pushed over her limit because she's already at or over her limit to begin with anyways, right? She's already at that breaking point. She's already broken. This is just right adding fuel onto the fire essentially. It's just making what was already there that much worse and bringing it all to the forefront. And then you have the cat coming in to also try and take over her and tell her, hey, you're broken. There's nothing left inside. So just let me take over and do my thing, right? And,
I
Neo doesn't want
guess
that because
so.
Neo just wants her gone, right? And then you see Neo
Mm.
is broken. And it's just, again, right? I don't think whether Pyrrha, Oscar, Ozpin, and all of them are illusions or not really isn't the focus. I
Mhm.
get what you mean, but I think it's the wrong focus on it. Personally, I would say
Maybe I get what you mean too, but it felt like false conflict for me
that's
a
fair.
bit.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Well, either way, moving on to episode 9, I honestly I didn't really have much to say about this one. Just that it's traditional.
I don't know. I for me, no, this isn't the episode where that happens. Never mind. I take it back. We'll get there. Yeah, this is the episode where we see it. We actually get to see Summers, model a little bit more. Very much,
Yeah.
very nice. Liked that. Big
Hmm.
fan of Summer over here. So
Yeah, of
and
course.
then we see a small reaction. I think again this is where many people, myself included to some degree, have an issue where you get back to the present, you see Ruby drink the tea in front of her friends, and she basically gets taken by the tree, and everyone's kind of like, you see a small scene of where everyone's kind of devastated by that, and then we very quickly move on
Hmm.
where we get to like, oh, we get to meet the genial gems very quickly, and John realizing that, his fear of loss held them back, right? Like he wasn't willing to accept any more losses, and he was holding the paper pleasers back from becoming the next step up of things.
Hmm. Yeah.
That being the genial gems, right? And,
Hmm.
once he accepts those feelings, they all get taken to the tree, and that's where they find Ruby, who is encased in wood. You see, like, the herbalist from earlier also encased in wood. And then, you see the herbalist ascend, and he's a butterfly now. Woo, he changed. And then they see the
Yeah.
cat, and they see Neo, who's been taken over by the cat, trying to get out, and she can't because Neo has no more attachment to Remna anymore. So he can't
Hmm.
get out with her. And then the cat reveals that, oh, there was a big twist. Alex didn't make it out. Lewis did. The cat killed Alex after she broke her promise to him to get him out.
Hmm.
Interesting, especially considering, oh, it's Lewis who goes on to write, The Girl Who Fell Through the World. I get you. I
Yeah.
see your writers. Lewis Carroll wrote Alice in Wonderland. So Lewis wrote the,
That was clever.
yeah, it was fun.
That was. I like that.
But yeah, and like then we start our big fight with the cat as Neo, Neo Cat Neo.
Yeah. I wonder if it's supposed to be like I haven't seen the show. I'm going by friends, but I wonder, Cat Neo is like a reference to Miraculous Ladybug because I know there's a character named Cat Noir. I think. I wonder if they were supposed to, if it's a reference to that.
I don't
Considering,
think so, but maybe. Feels.
I'm just
Eh,
making a joke about it because some friends vented to me about that show and how frustrating it is not too long ago. So maybe it's still in my
fair
mind.
enough. So yeah.
Anywho, so okay, but then like we are kind of making it to episode 10,
Well, yeah,
and
I mean, we episode 9 at the end of it, we Ruby meets the blacksmith in the void. And the
mm-hmm.
blacksmith later again offers to help change who she is, conjuring a variety of weapon, and we see Summers, and that's the one Ruby reaches for first, which goes straight
Yes,
into episode 10 of Solitude and Self, where we see
I already to say cool action sequences,
Yeah,
and
a lot of good fighting stuff between like Weiss, Blake, Yang, Jean, and the cat going on. But for me, the more important stuff, we learned that
Mhm.
Summer lied. Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
Because yeah, like we find a bit more. We see that Summer. All right, so for me, I saw this scene and like my first reaction was fucking vindicated. Finally, I have said so long, like since volume 2, 3, 1, back way back. Hey,
Mhm.
Summer 100% went on a mission with Raven. Raven knows some shit. She's not saying shit. Don't know why. Can't tell you why. I just know for a fact Summer went on a mission with Raven, and that was the final mission. Everyone, no, that's not the case. That never happened. Raven wouldn't do that. Summer wouldn't do that. Fucking called it. Called it back in
Yeah.
volume way back then. Fuck all of y'all. Fucking
Well,
vindicated.
you see, sometimes you can be right. It's not all the time, but sometimes you can be right.
Fuck you.
Thank you. Well,
But yeah,
to
I
be
I loved this because
honest,
again, you get to see Summer, you get to see Raven, and you're like, hey, they portaled to somewhere. Who did they portal to? Don't fucking know. Doesn't fucking matter. I was right, motherfuckers. And I'm sure there were other people who called it too, but we're talking about me here. This is my time. Fuck
yeah,
all
and
y'all.
hey, for all intents and purposes, go you for calling it. Like, I can say I did, so yay.
I mean, you're not a fan. You don't count.
Yeah.
That's very mean. You're not a fan.
I,
Get out of here. We're not talking with you. We're talking with fans only here.
yeah, we don't talk about the non-fans.
Yeah,
No,
the
no,
the, the
no.
normies.
Hmm.
But yeah, like very fun episode, and we see, you know, during the fight, Ruby finally finds herself and figures out that I don't need to change. I'm capable enough as I am. I'm good enough as I am, and I can make it and I can do it as me. And she comes out and nothing has changed, and they kick the cat's ass, and Neo like helps them destroy the cat using the Jabberwocker, something we've not talked about a lot, but not all that important really. And then Neo's like, "Welp, I'm gonna go and see what I become with the help of the tree now. Bye bye. I'm no longer the villain." And then they
Ooh.
all go through the door and they all meet the blacksmith, and they have a bit of a
Mm.
talk. And the blacksmith reveals that the brothers, the two gods of Remnant that created Remnant, apparently came from here originally, and they were created by the tree to help the ever
This
after
felt
become what it is.
a lot. This felt like a lot of exposition dumped for the very end of the season, but
A little bit.
it is an interesting exposition dump.
It's
But
it's a
at
it's a
some
neat twist. I don't think anyone called this or saw the brothers saw that coming, right? The brothers come from this area. I think a lot of people are like, the brothers created this area, then to find out no, they didn't. I think a lot of people were surprised by that, and I think it opens up some interesting ideas that they can use going forward, right?
agreed.
And Jean's no longer old. He's back now. He's young
Uh,
again.
I'm not sure. Like, I hope that just because he's no longer, you know, old and that it doesn't come at the expense of also sucking away his skill. That
I
like
don't
he's
think it
still.
will, because they still kept like the white specks in his hair, right? His hair
Yeah,
still has that.
so I hope that just because he's back to because it's like, oh, I do so annoying. Yes, like I hope that it doesn't go back to. He's just gonna be at that. You know what I mean. I hope that the skill set remains.
That's fair. So, a question for you I have here at the end.
Mhm.
What did you think about Ruby's journey from, commit die to realizing that? Because I don't have a lot of experience, I will admit, with depression and suicide. Not personal experience. I have experience through
Yeah.
friends and people I've talked to, but not personal experience. I think
Mhm.
you have a bit more closer personal experience to yourself than I do.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to
So
hear your opinion on this journey and how you felt about it.
for one, it, taking account the fact that I felt like it was rushed. Okay, that some
Mm,
things felt like they were rushed. I feel like the overall idea of it and the overall idea of again doing it with Ruby was interesting,
Mm.
and there were a lot of stuff that I liked about it. And I think for her, it is interesting, and it's interesting to see it with her. And I think she's the right character to do it with because again they talk about also I think since season one they talk that she's relative that she's like a very young student compared to the other students at Beacon.
Yeah, she's like a year or two behind.
Yeah, so in a way she's the most naive out of everyone. She's the youngest, not just in age but also in terms of mental experience. So it makes sense that this is like her first big failure, right? What happened at the end of Volume 8. That's her
Hmm.
first big failure, and also she lost Penny, who she was really connected to, and everything, and so I feel like all the bases were there, and a lot of scenes with her were done well. I already talked, some good praise about the voice actress and how she portrayed her throughout the season. That was really good. Um,
But your thought about
and
the ending here?
yeah, with the ending, it does. I'll tell you what. I feel like she did grow, and I
Hmm.
feel like I feel like it was done overall well, but I am also feeling like this isn't the end.
I would
Like,
agree. If this is the end, I would be
if
upset personally
yeah, if it's the end, then I'm taking back the praise I just said because that means it led to nothing.
because I feel like at the very least in Volume 10, there needs to be some kind of discussion between, at the very least, between Ruby and Yang, right? Because
Hmm.
Ruby did that right in front of Yang, staring her directly in the face. I feel like
Yes.
Yang should have something to say about that. And if we just
Which
move past
also
that, it would feel off, right?
that's another thing actually that looking back at this volume, and not necessarily if it's a good or bad thing but I think this is the first time where Ruby and Yang didn't really feel like sisters in this volume.
It's interesting that you say that because there's other people who have said similar, and there are other people who are very adamantly like, you know, against that feeling where Yang was fine, Yang did nothing wrong, and I don't know.
Not necessarily a Yang did nothing wrong or anything, but in that it felt like if I were to let's assume, right? Let's
Mhm.
assume I could have just watched that season without the knowledge of the show, and you told me these two were sisters, I would go really.
That's fair because it definitely feels like, I don't know, and you can sit back and say, right, like, oh, Yang's working through other stuff with Blake and herself, right? But
I get it, but I think there's maybe regardless of your romantic connections, if your sister is about to commit suicide right in front of you, this is not like just oh no, this is you took care of this kid, and it's implied throughout the entire show that Ruby and Yang are super close, and if anything, the reason they're both going to Beacon is that their father even approves of this is because he knows Yang would take care of Ruby. So I think if someone would have taken it really hard, it's Yang, but she seems to be taking it just as well as just as bad as the others.
they have
And
a
it's like,
few scenes like Yang running up to Ruby, who's encased in wood, trying to break her out very quickly, and everyone saying, no, no, it's okay, right? They have that scene, and they have like the small shot of like Yang, when you first see, Ruby get taken by the tree and you see all those roots grow over the spot, right?
yeah.
Yang's the only one who
Mhm.
never moves. She just continues to look at the same spot, very with this devastated look on her face. But like, other than those two small scenes, it feels like, yeah, I can. If someone says I feel like it needed more, I would agree. I think they needed to do a little bit more, and it felt like they just moved way too quickly from the first moment when Ruby gets taken by the tree and commits suicide to, oh, we're here talking about Jean and the paper pleasers and the genial gems and all that stuff. Very quickly moving forward, right? it just feels way too quick. It feels like there should have been something there. Again, it just feels like there should have been something there that wasn't there.
Yeah, like way too quick, way too, yeah, and not enough. Not the focus wasn't on the right parts. Maybe that's the idea.
That's fair. I kind of agree. And I'm
But
curious
at the
to hear,
same time, in regards to your question, I think overall, Flawless Society, it was done well, but
what did you
I
think?
can't give you a definitive answer until I see how well it's handled in the next volume.
That's fair. What did you think of the kind of quote unquote therapy session with the blacksmith? Do you think that was done well?
I think so, yeah, because the blacksmith doesn't necessarily give definitive answers, right? And that's the first thing that because I've had it of friends and sometimes myself. I would have the same assumption that when you go to therapy or when you talk your problems out, it you might think that this is it, you conquer the problem, but what you learn to realize, so sooner or later, is that you never actually conquer it. Like, you can diffuse the thing that's bothering you, you can at least feel better about it, you can
Mhm,
learn how to live with it, but it never really goes away,
mhm,
and there's no clear answer to how to do it. Like, a solution that's working for me could be different than the solution that's working for you.
mhm.
It's not a one person thing. So I kind of like that the blacksmith, it's that, on the one hand, it does frustrate Ruby to hear what she has to say, but it's also, yeah, that's therapy sometimes. That's how you get through this thing. You have to, the way you get and the way you manage to live with it is essentially is essentially to just, facing stuff you don't want to hear and you don't want to see, but you have to do it for your own sanity.
Interesting. That's really interesting to hear because I was definitely I felt like it was good, but I couldn't say for certain myself because again, I don't have that kind of experience that other people do, right? I saw a lot of people
Okay,
say that, oh
let's
no, I thought
say,
I saw a lot of people say that they felt it was done well, but I've also seen a lot of people still say that I have issues with this because, she committed suicide and there's things that I felt should have been talked about or done that weren't, right? And like we
the
talked about, right? Like we need to see more in volume 10 of, people need to talk with Ruby Steele because
so
a
you
suicide
see,
attempt, right? Like, to correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like, when you do something like this and you don't succeed or you pull back at the very end or what have you, right? There is that thing of, you've not just affected yourself, you've affected the people around you as well, right? And maybe I'm wrong in this, but I do think it's something that should be the case of, at least when you're telling a story that involves something like this, those other people should react and have something to say and do in regards to something like
so
this.
for the record, what I was talking about is, at least with, answering your question with how the blacksmith talked to Ruby
Sure,
through
sure.
this.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to ask me about the suicide thing, that's a bit more complicated,
Mm,
because like you said, this is not a thing that was really touched upon, and volume 10 can either ignore it completely or address it. If they
mhm,
ignore it completely, then it sucks. It's the wrong way to go about this, and it's not done well.
mhm.
If they're going to address it, then we need to wait and see how they're gonna address it. But
That's
I
fair.
do get what where people are coming from when they say, you know, because I have, knock on wood, I haven't experienced any friend who actually went with it or
Mhm,
something. But like one of my mom's cousins actually, and but he was old when he did it, but still. And I know of people who wanted to but never went along with it, and it's like, listen, it's hard.
mhm.
It's hard for a person to and I can also tell you that if a person ever tells you something like this, you are checking on them like every 10 minutes. Even
Hmm.
if you know they're like asleep or something, you still want to be sure, and you do everything in your power to do it. So, let's say if the way the show presents it, it feels like some talking needs to happen, and I hope that we'll get it involved, especially from Yang.
That's fair. That's very fair. I kind of feel
Like,
the same way at this point.
mhm.
Speaking of, here at the end, um, volume 10, you know, we talked about the character bloat from volume 7 and 8, but we are going to be going back to Nora, Ren, Winter, Whitley, Willow, Weiss's family, Oscar,
Yeah,
any new characters that we, might see within Vacuo, since that's where we'll be, as well as potentially, because we have some characters who've already been established from Vacuo in the RWBY books that have been written. We might be seeing
yeah.
them. So, what are you thinking? What would you want to see them do, considering they're going back to a place with many more characters, potential character bloat? Would you like to see them try and do
All I'm gonna
something about
say,
that?
all I'm gonna say is don't forget who your main characters are,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm sure that the other characters have their fans, and we do have Nora and Ren, and some other characters who I would like to see too. But the show is called RWBY. People stuck around with this show for some of the other characters too, yes, but also because they enjoyed Team RWBY.
I'm here for
The
Summer and
main,
Raven only.
well, but
No,
you get what I mean,
but I
though.
get you. Yeah, I get you.
Mm. So please just don't forget who the main characters are, and considering there are still a lot of plot threads to continue from Volume 9 going into Volume 10, don't sacrifice the good stuff you can do with your main cast just because, oh, we wrote these characters in, we better let them do something.
That's fair. Other than
It,
a particular other than a RWBY discussion with other people sing or sings, is there anything in particular you would really be interested in seeing?
um well, I'm not sure if they're gonna do it, but maybe walking towards a conclusion.
Conclusion of like RWBY and what happened in
The show.
volume of the show. I don't know if we'll get that in volume 10. They've talked about in the past where they want to go to like volume 11, maybe 12 at most. So we'll see. I mean,
But
as of right
at the
now,
same
they've
time,
announced
well,
nothing about volume 10. And we also, remember, are dealing with Warner Brothers Discovery. So we might get the Warner Brothers DC RWBY crossover movie. It doesn't do well. And they're like, RWBY's dead. Bang. And that's it. We get nothing else after this. It's entirely possible.
yeah, well, so the point is, I know that they've confirmed Volume 10, but like you
I
said, things
don't
are
know if they
just.
have. I'll admit. I'd have to look into it. I've not looked super into it, I will say. So they might have confirmed volume 10. They might not have. I don't
I
know.
recall that Volume 10 was confirmed like back when we covered Volume 8. So
No, that's fair.
I'm assuming it's still in the planning stage, just not in production.
Mm-hmm. Very fair.
But regardless of what they're gonna do, regardless of how they're gonna approach this, we'll have to wait and see.
So, final question for you then. And I'll ask you this question again if we ever cover the RWBY DC movie. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Next week.
Wink, spoilers. But I'm
Oh,
curious. RWBY Volume 9 and RWBY Ice Queendom. These things came out at fairly similar times. Which one do
yeah.
you think you preferred overall?
Well, you see that's kind of it's because
It's
you're
very difficult,
asking
I
me.
know, because I'm asking you like all 9 volumes of RWBY versus RWBY Ice Queendom, but like in a general sense of
Well, it's also just I'm judging a remake and I'm judging a sequel
that's
based on
fair.
two different.
That's very fair. In a general sense of we were gone for
I'll tell you what,
practically
though.
3 years.
I'll tell you what. I guess I'll say Volume 9 just because it actually managed to make me care about the show again.
That's fair. That's very fair. I would tend to agree with that. I think Volume 9
And
definitely
I
brought a
enjoyed
lot,
that
lot back.
them a lot. If you remember our episode about that, but I also think there's Ice Kingdom can also just stand on its own and it doesn't need RWBY in general. So I appreciate that an actual sequel to 2 seasons that I found lackluster can actually make me interested in the future again.
I think it was also really good because this was essentially, not entirely, but very close to a 3-year hiatus. And I think we came back very strong because in the past, right, it's generally tended to be a 1 year, maybe a year and a couple months hiatus at most, right? Like it's
Yes.
very quick. This was the first time we've had to wait for almost 3 years for a volume of RWBY. And I
Wait,
think they came back.
was it really 3 years since Volume 8? Damn.
Volume 8 ended in March 2021, and Volume 9 began in February of
Oh,
2023. But Volume 8 started airing in November of 2020, so I'm going by when it started, not when it ended.
Okay, fair.
So it not quite 3 years, but very close, I would say.
2 years, it's still a while.
Yeah, no, it's fair. Like it's a very different wait period, and I think it was nice to see them come back with something so strong, right? And see that, again, that it was very well done, right? The wait was worth it, essentially.
Yeah, the wait was worth it overall. I would agree. Like flaws aside, this was a good volume.
Yeah, agreed. Very much agreed. And I'm very curious to see where they go with Volume 10.
Yeah, I'm curious. Don't fuck it up, please.
All the characters.
Well, I guess so. Anything else to say about Volume 9, or shall we wrap up?
No, we can wrap up.
All right, so you brought us in, so you want to do the wrap up?
Oh God, it's been so long. Do I remember? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching and listening to us cover RWBY Volume 9. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on Tumblr at the Berkcast team. Or if you want to get in touch with us on Twitter, you can find us at Berkcast, capital B, capital C. I was your host for this episode, Wolf, and I was joined by
HC, who also remembers to tell you that we hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you want to tell us about your thoughts, you can do this in the comment section below as well.
I was getting there, ruining my flow here, man. God.
Sure you will.
With that said, we all hope you enjoyed, as HC said, and we will see you next time.
Take care.
Bye-bye.